Begin today the Gemara on Kuf Tezayin Amud Aleph, 4 lines from the top of the Yamud. So this is continuing from the Gemara before, where there was a machlokes between Abaya and Rava regarding a person that passed away, and his name was Rabbi Yitzchak, or Yitzchak. There was a Reish Galusa. And the question is, if Edom come and say that this Yitzchak passed away, do we have to be concerned that maybe there's a second Yitzchak, and therefore we can't identify who he is? So Abaya says, yeah, we have to be concerned for such a thing. And Rava says, no, we're not concerned. We rely on the fact that it's this woman that comes and says that her husband Yitzchak passed away, and we're not concerned that maybe there's a different Yitzchak. So the Gemara now brings another story where there's a machlokes of Abaya and Rava, and here Abaya and Rava are going to switch their opinions, as we'll see. Sahu Gitta de Ishtakach Besura. There was a get that was found in the city of Surah, and the woman comes and says, this is my get, my husband gave me this get. Uksiv Be'achi, and the get, it was written in it as follows. Surah Masa, in the city of Surah, Ano Onon Barchia. I, Onon Barchia, Neherda, that came from the city of Nerda, Patoris v'Tarachis Ploinis Intasi. I gave this get to my wife, and I sent her away, and I was Megarisha. So this is the get. So it says the name of the person, and this was a get that was found in Surah. And it was written in it that he gave the get to her where? He came from Nerda originally. But where was the get given to her? In the city of Surah. So what happened? Ubatku Rabbanon misura vad Nerda. The Rabbanon went and made a whole interrogation. They looked from Surah to Nerda, v'lehava onan barchia achrina, and they didn't find another onan barchia. Levar me onan barchia me chagra. They found an individual with this name, Onan Barchia, that came originally from a different city, from Chagra, the Have ben Nerda. And then, presently, he was living in the city of Nerda. And not only that, V'asa Sadi V'amar, and Edom came along and said, Dahahu Yoime, that on that day that this get was written, Ki Ichtev Gita, when the get was written, Onan Barchia me Chagra Gabon Have, that this Onan Barchia that originally was from Chagra, where was he? He was in Nerda, together with those Edom in Nerda. So this seems to be a case where there's no problems here, because the get that has this name, Onan Barchia, was from an individual that wrote, or at least gave this get to his wife. We're in Surah. And the Edom are telling us that the second Onan Barchia that we found was in Nerda on that day. So what's the problem? So Amar Abaya says, Afle didi da'amin chashinon. Even according to my opinion, that I said that we should be concerned that maybe there's a second Yitzchak, hacha loy chashinon. But over here, we're not concerned that maybe this second Onan Barchia that we found, he wrote a get. Why? The Ka'amri Sa'adi de B'nerda have. We said that we have here Edom that say that he was in Nerda on that day. So my boy b'Surah, what would he be doing in Surah? So how could he be the same individual that gave the get in Surah? So very good. So before Abai said you're concerned, but here he says there's no reason to be concerned. Rava says the exact reverse. Amar Rava, af lididi delay chashinon. I say the opposite. Even though my opinion before was that when we have Edom that Yitzchak passed away, we're not concerned that there's a second Yitzchak. Hacha chashinon. Here, however, we are concerned because Dilma, it's possible begamla parcha ozel, that he somehow came with a flying camel, which is just an expression. He came somehow very quickly from Nerda to Surah, and he gave the get to his wife. So even though Edom said he was in Nerda on that day, but it's possible that he made it very quickly over to Surah. Inami bekfitze, or maybe he jumped over. Rashi says kfitze means with Hashem, which is what's called kfitze saderach. He came in some miraculous way. Inami mili mosar, or something actually which could, even without kfitze saderach, maybe he gave over to shluchim to go give the get to his wife in Surah. He wrote it, he was in Nerda, as the Edom saw. He told Edom though in Nerda, go and bring the get to my wife in Surah. Kedamul hu Rav l'safri, and the Rav would say to the Seifrim, to the scribes that write a get, V'chenamul Ravuna l'safri, Ravuna would tell them as well, Ki isnchu b'shili, ksuva b'shili. If you're writing the get in the city of Shili, so write in the get that it was written in the city of Shili. Avalgav the mimsaron mili behini. Even though the shlichus to write this get was given over to you from the city of Hini, but nevertheless, if you're writing the get in Shili, you write the name of the city Shili, or in the reverse, behini, ksuva behini. If you're in the city of Hini, so write in the get that you're in Hini. Avagav the mimsaron mili b'shili. Even though the get from the husband, the shlichus was given over to you from Shili. So the point is over here as well, it's possible that the husband, which was in Nerdah, gave over the shlichus that the get should be written in Surah. So therefore we should be concerned about the fact that we found a second Rav Onan Bar Chia. So therefore this is the machlokes here, to Abai and Rava. Now the Gemara just concludes and goes back to a machlokes that we learned about in yesterday regarding a person that gave his friend a pekodin, a deposit of shumshimi. If you remember, we learned about the sesame seeds, and they were arguing whether he gave him back the sesame seeds or not. And the Gemara here had a discussion, should we say that it's possible that he actually gave it back to them already? He emptied the barrel and he refilled the barrel with his own sesame seeds. Or maybe we're not concerned for that. Maybe if the barrel is still there, it's probably the same sesame seeds that were originally given to him. So, Ma'avi Allah the shumshimi. What's the final halacha regarding shumshimi? So again, the Gemara brings the machlokes. Rav Yema Amar loy chashinon. Rav Yema says we are not concerned that maybe he emptied it out and he placed different shumshimi in it. Ravina Amar chashinon. Ravina says no, we are concerned. It is possible that it was emptied out and he placed different shumshimi in it, so we can't trust him that he can collect this shumshimi from him. The halacha is that it is possible that he already took his shumshimi, he took his sesames, and now there was other sesames there that are not his. Going back to the Mishnah. So the Mishnah said, if a woman comes and says her husband passed away, and we know that there was an argument, there was a fight between the husband and wife, so we don't trust her. So what exactly defines this, that we say that there's a fight between the husband and wife, and then we don't trust her? If we heard that she said to her husband, divorce me. So we know that she's not getting along with him. So that's a case that we're not going to trust her anymore. That's not enough. All women, in a moment of when they get excited or angry, they could say such a thing to their husband. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything. A moment later they can calm down and they never meant it. So you can't prove just from the fact that she said this in a moment of excitement, Garsheni, that she's in a real fight with her husband. Ella, says the Gemara, if we know that she said to her husband, Geirashtani, you already have divorced me. If we heard that she says this to her husband, then if for sure she's saying this because she doesn't want to stay with him. If she actually said to her husband and she's claiming and arguing, you already divorced me, she should actually be trusted that that's true. But the Rav Amnuna said, Isha she'amra lebaila. Woman that comes and says to her husband, Gei rashtani, that you have already divorced me, nemenes. We actually believe her. Why? Because we have a good reason to believe her. Chazake ein isha me'iza paneh b'fnei baila. We have a chazake that a woman would not be so brazen to come and say to her husband, you have divorced me, if it's not true. So that can't be the case here either, that she's telling her husband that you've already divorced me. So what is it that we see that she said to her husband that tells us that they're fighting with one another? There's a ketata here. So the Gemara says, rather, she comes and tells her husband, you have divorced me in front of these two witnesses. And then, Visha'ilno, we go and ask those two witnesses, is this true? And they say, never happened. So now we know that it must be that she only said this because she wanted to leave her husband. There was a fight between them. That's the case that we say that she's not trusted to say that her husband passed away. So what's the reason why, when she's in a fight with her husband, we don't trust her to say that her husband died? Rav Chanina says she hates her husband to such an extent she's actually ready to outright go ahead and lie and then get married to someone else. And she knows what's going to happen as a result. If her husband shows back up, she will not be allowed to go back to her first husband and not to her second husband either. But she hates him to such an extent she'd lie in order to become asa to go back to her husband. Rav Shimi Barashi says not to this extent. It's not because of such a tremendous level of hatred that she's ready to lie, but like similar to what we learned before. If she's not getting along with her husband so well, so then in a situation where she thinks her husband died, she's not going to be so dedicated to him to wait and to see if he actually really died, and it's not possible that he was saved. So therefore she's not so medayik, she's not so particular about this. But we're not afraid that she's mamish going to outright lie. My beinayu, says the Gemara, what is the difference, the practical difference between these two reasons that we just said? So the Gemara, beinayu, so the difference would be in a case, the argil hu ketota. If it's the husband that's the one that began a fight with her, so not she did not. Taisus here explains this Gemara that she did not begin fighting with her husband. Her husband began fighting with her, but she really is still interested in being married to him. She still likes him, and she's not interested in leaving him. So therefore, in such a situation, we're not going to be afraid that she's going to outright lie. But according to the other opinion that says that what we're concerned about is that she's going to say something and she's not going to make a full investigation, but the dummy, she's going to just assume that he died. So even in this situation where the husband is fighting with her and she's not necessarily fighting with him, she still wants to stay married to him, but still they're not getting along that great. So we're still going to be concerned with the dummy that she might not make such a good investigation before she says that her husband passed away. Another question was asked, Eid echad b'kitate mahu. An Eid echad. So again, as we said before, an Eid echad is usually believed to say that a woman's husband passed away. But the question is, in a situation where the husband and wife were not getting along, and then Eid echad comes and says that the husband died, is an Eid echad believed? This is very similar to the question Gemara asked before, whether an Eid echad is believed in a time when there's war. Eid echad is believed, but the question is, in a wartime, do we trust an Eid echad? And there the Gemara never resolved that. So here the Gemara is asking a very similar question. So, and the Gemara says the same exact svaris, like it said before. My time at Eid echad mehemen. So now what's the reason why an Eid echad is believed? So do I say the reason is mishum de milsa da avidele igluya le mishaker? Since this is something which eventually will come out, if the husband's alive, he'll show up. So therefore, this aid would never lie about this, and that's why we trust him. So even in this situation where the husband and wife don't get along, we can rely on this, that the husband is not lying. Again, that the aid is not lying. Or maybe the reason why the Eid echad is believed is mishum dehi daiko mitzvah. We're not just relying on the aid; we're relying on her making her own investigation in order to get remarried. But over here, if we're relying on her, we can't rely on her because she's in an argument with her husband. So she's not going to be so medayik before she gets remarried. Teiku, so this ibaya here remains unresolved. Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah said that this whole halacha that we believe a woman that her husband died is not in a regular situation where she shows up in Bezdin and says so. She has to come to Bezdin if we see that she has torn clothing and she's crying and she's mourning her husband's death. Then we believe her. So they said to Rabbi Yehuda, according to your opinion, pikachas tinase, a smart woman will get remarried, and shaita le tinase, a woman that's a shaita will not get remarried. So there's two pshatim in this Gemara. One pshat is a pikachas, a woman that usually walks around with proper clothing, and now all of a sudden she walks into Bezdin, torn clothing and crying, so that's a sign that she's actually mourning. But a shaita that always walks around in the torn clothing and never is put together, so she walks into Bezdin with torn clothing, it doesn't prove anything, so this shaita will not be able to get remarried. Another pshat in the Gemara is that a pikachas will be smart. She knows Bezdin won't trust her unless she comes and tears her clothing and cries. So she'll come in and cry to Bezdin, and then she'll be mutter. A shaita doesn't know this, and she'll come into Bezdin saying that her husband died, and Bezdin won't trust her. Ella, therefore, they argued with Rabbi Yehuda and they told him, Achazu va'achazu, either way, a woman that comes to Bezdin and says testimony that her husband died, tinase, she can get remarried. Hahi the Asya lebeidina de Rabbi Yehuda, there was a woman that was coming to the Bezdin of Rabbi Yehuda to say that her husband died. So what happened? Amri la, so the Chachamim, then the others that were there, so they told her, Sifti bailech. So if you're coming to say Eidus and you want that Yehuda should trust you, so you should be eulogizing your husband, Kiri manech, tear your garments, Sisri mazech, untie your hairs, which is also, I guess, in those times a sign of the Avelus. Yeah, we had this in the Gemara in Meit Katan. So, and then he'll trust you. So the Gemara asks on this, how could they tell her to do this? Alfua shikra? Are they teaching her to lie? Answers the Gemara, Inu karabanan svirulahu. The ones that told her to do this, they held like the opinion of the Rabbanan, that said that she's believed either way. Whether she shows signs of mourning, she does not show signs of mourning, she's going to be believed either way. So since according to their opinion, she should be believed either way, so true, she's doing something where she's going to fake the fact that she's mourning, but it's being done for a purpose which is okay, because then he's going to allow her to go and get remarried. And they held it that anyways, even without the mourning signs, she's allowed to get remarried. Interesting. So you do see here in the Gemara that a person could do something which is sort of a lie if it's in a situation where anyways you're supposed to be believed upon him. So this is the reason why they told her to do this. Mishnah, going back to this whole the thing over here, what was the history of this heter that they gave a woman, a heter that she can come and say her husband passed away and she's trusted to get remarried. So there was a machlokes about this. Beis Hillel say, Lo shamaynu, we did not hear this heter that was given for this originally, ella b'bam and akotzer, that if this is a woman that comes from the harvest in the field, ubayis medina, and she's coming from within the same country, and she says that her husband passed away, then we trust her. And this is based on an incident that happened, and because of this incident that happened, Chachamim instituted that a woman should be believed. And the Gemara will bring what the story was. Amrulem Beis Shammai, so Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, it doesn't matter. Here, this is one of the cases where Beis Shammai is lenient. If she's coming from the grain harvest, or she's coming from the olive harvest, from the grape harvest, she's coming from one country to another. So either way, she says her husband passed away, she's believed. There, that original story, that's how it happened, that she came from a grain harvest and she was believed. But then the takana of Chachamim was that she should be believed in any case. Says the Mishnah, eventually Beis Hillel came around and agreed to Beis Shammai that a woman is always believed. Tanya, so we learned in the Braisa, elaborates more on this argument here. Beis Shammai said to Beis Hillel, according to your opinion, that we should only give the heter for the woman exactly like the incident that happened originally, so then the heter should only be like it originally happened, which is in a grain harvest or a wheat harvest. If it's a barley harvest, how would I know that you believe then? It's not exactly like it originally happened. And only in the harvest of cutting grains. If she's cutting baitzes, olives or grapes or figs or dates, how do I know different types of harvest that she should be believed as well? Ella, so therefore Beis Shammai concludes and says, the story that happened was with the grain harvest. But there's no reason to make any distinction. She's believed in any situation. So over here as well, so the story that happened was a woman that came from the same country to say that her husband passed away. But in any other situation as well, even if she's coming from a faraway place in a different country and says her husband passed away there, she'll also be believed. What is the Beis Hillel answer to this? No, if she's coming from the same country, so because there are people that travel within the same country, so she knows that she's coming from a place that people are traveling and are coming from there, so mirsis, she's afraid to lie about this. If she's coming from a faraway place and not the leishchichi, people are not commonly traveling from there to where she's now, mirsis, she's not so afraid to lie. So therefore she's not believed. So Beis Hillel, in other words, is not even responding to this that Beis Shammai says, why aren't you making a distinction between a grain harvest, olive harvest, and so on? That Beis Hillel agrees. There's no difference what type of harvest it is. But the main point Beis Hillel was saying was, only if she's coming from the same country she believed. If she's coming from a faraway place, we don't trust her to say her husband died because she's not afraid to lie. But Beis Shammai disagree because they say, even though people don't travel alone, in those times it was dangerous to travel alone, but people do come in caravans, and it is also possible that people will travel from a faraway place, and therefore she's still afraid to lie. So what is the story that happened that this heter came about? It was at the end of the harvest of the wheat. 10 people together went to cut the harvest of the wheat. A snake bit one of these individuals and he died. And his wife came and notified Bezdin about what happened. So Bezdin sent over there to see if it's true. And they found that what she said about her husband that he died was true. So at that time the Chachamim said, a woman that says that her husband passed away, she can get remarried. Or Meis Baili, her husband passed away and she had no children, he had no children, to Siyavim. So then the mitzvah of Yibum could be fulfilled. That's the story. So therefore that was the whole argument here, if the Chachamim instituted this only similar to the way the story happened or not. Says the Gemara, name, shall we say that this argument here between Beishamai and Beisilol is Rab Chananya ben Akiva v'Rabbanan. So we find in another place, Rab Chananya ben Akiva, or others are good as Rab Chananya ben Akavya. Beplukte the Beishamai Beisilol kamifliki. They're arguing in the same machlokes as Beishamai and Beisilol here. So here we once learned this before in the Gemara Chagiga. The Gemara is going to bring also a similar thing, a takana that Chachamim made. And the question is, do we apply the takana only exactly like the original story of what caused the takana, or no, even not exactly like that story that happened? What's this takana? The Tanya we learned in Abraisa. Lo yisa adam mei chatas ve'efa chatas. You're not allowed to carry the waters of the paraduma or the ashes of the paraduma. Ve'yavirem b'yarden u'b'sfina, and carry it over the Yarden River and in a boat. And not only carrying it over and going over in a boat, but also similar, you're not allowed to throw it over the river from one side to the other. And also, you shouldn't float it over the water, and you shouldn't ride with it over the water, and on an animal that's going over the water, or on your friend that's swimming over the water. If you're actually walking on the ground, just like if you're walking on dry land, you're allowed to carry it over. To carry it is only if your feet are touching the floor. Aval maviram ala gesher, you're allowed to go over a bridge, and that's echad yarden, whether you're going over the yarden, vechad shar naharis, whether you're going over other rivers, because the bridge is positioned, of course, on both sides of the river, on the ground. So therefore it's considered to be attached to the ground. You're going over the bridge, you're like walking on the ground. But going over a river or any pool of water without touching the ground, that's not allowed. Rab Chananya ben Akavya restricts this gzeira specifically to one case. The only time they ask it to transport over the water is specifically the Yarden River, not any other river, and specifically in a boat. And because it's exactly like the story that happened, as the Gemara will bring soon the story. But now the point is, so shall we say Rabbanon that say that the Gzeira is not only specifically like the story happened, that's like Beishamai here, that say that the heter for the woman is not only specifically like the heter originally was given. And Rab Chananya ben Akavi, Rab Chananya ben Akavi that limits the Isser here is like Beisilo that limits the heter exactly to the way the heter was originally given. So the Gemara says you can't compare. Amri lach Rabbanon will answer you. Anan damrinon afke Beisilo. We would agree even to what Beisilo says, that over there the heter was restricted to the situation that the heter was given. But over here it's different. Why? Atkan lekamri Beisilo hasam. The reason why over there the heter is restricted is elal mishum demirsis, as Beisilo said his svara before, because in the same country, Mirsis b'makom karev. If she's saying Edus about her husband that passed away in a close place, so she's afraid to lie. But Mirsis, again, b'makom karev Mirsis, in a place that's near, she's afraid. B'makom rachik lo Mirsis, but in a far place, she's not afraid to lie. That's why over there, Beisil limited the heter. But hacha, when it comes to this story here, the gzeira, not to carry over the waters of the Paraduma, it might become tamei, as we'll see soon the story that happened. Mali Yarden, Mali Sharnaris. What reason should there be to make a distinction between the Yarden or any other river? On the other hand, says the Gemara, Rab Chananya ben Akavya or ben Akiva Amalach, he tells you, Anadamri Afle Beishamai. I could agree to Beishamai that over there the heter for the woman was given without the restrictions. But over here, the Isser is only... The Isser over here is for only specifically for the case that happened. Why? The reason why Beishamai says that by the heter of a woman we're more liberal with the heter is because we have a svara to be more liberal with the heter. A woman will make an investigation before she gets remarried. So therefore, Mali Makim Karev, Mali Makim Rachik. It makes no difference if she's coming from a close place or a far place. She's going to make that investigation. But hacha over here, mishumaisa shahaya beyarden ubesvina, because the story happened in the Yarden River and with a boat, so therefore the gzeira is limited to the Yarden and the boat. So the besvina the hava maisa goes rabbanon. That's the reason why Chachamim made the gzeiras. And b'shar naharais do lo hava maisa. So in other rivers where the story did not happen, like goes rabbanon, Chachamim never made their gzeira in the first place. My Maisa Shahaya. So what was the story that happened? Amar Rav Yudah Amar Rav. Rav Yudah said in the name of Rav, the story was Maisa Ba'adam Shayim Mavir Mechatas Ve'eva Chatas B'Yarden B'Sfina. Person was transporting the waters of the Chatas, the ashes of the Chatas, which is the Para Aduma, through the Yarden in a boat. Nimtza kezayis min ameis tochav b'karkoyes shosfina. Then they discovered there was a kezayis from a dead body that was stuck in the bottom, in the floor of the boat. And then, so the waters of the Para Aduma that were above it in the boat became tameh. Paisa Shah Amrus, at that time Chachamim instituted, Lo Yisada Mechatas Ve'eva Chatas, a person should not transport the waters of the Chatas or the ashes of the Chatas, V'yavirem B'yarden B'sfina, to transport it over the Yarden in a boat. Therefore, Chananya ben Akiva said that this is dafke like that story happened, but not in any other case.